Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Blessings be on the speaker, the pure consciousness who would manifest the words of truth and wisdom. Blessings be on the listener. Blessings be on the speaker, the one who would manifest the words of truth and the words of wisdom through this mind and through this finite body. So somebody has inquired about a term they hear, Brahman. It has been a while since I have spoken to you because I have been busy at work, but as I have mentioned before in my previous messages, and I am mentioning again that I am never busy enough to answer an inquiry. Every life in the Jivan and the carnation, between the birth and death, between the birth and death, is serving a purpose. And the very purpose of my life is to bring clarity. So everything else can wait and everything else falls behind when that purpose emerges, which is my purpose, to bring clarity in you, in your perception, so you can see clear and you can see Brahman. You have asked, you have inquired. It's significant. It's very significant to look into it, to look into it closely, that there remains no confusion in our awareness about your inquiry. Your inquiry and to the answer to the inquiry would serve a great purpose. Nothing can bring more clarity in our perception. Nothing can bring more clarity in what we essentially are, which is pure awareness or consciousness, than to discuss the word Brahman. Brahman, of course, like any other word, is a Vedic Sanskrit word. The literal meaning of this word is that which has no boundaries. The literal meaning of the word Brahman is that which has no boundaries, or in other words, that which is boundless. You understand? The literal Brahman, a word just like any other word, it's a Vedic Sanskrit word, and the literal meaning or the English of Brahman is that which is boundless, or that which has no boundaries. That which has no boundaries, or that which has boundless, by its very definition, it's omnipotent. And by its very definition, it is omnipresent. Brahman, as I said, just like any other word, indicates or points out to something which is a principle underlying behind every reality. I hope you understand what I'm saying to you. Brahman indicates or points out towards, if you want to call it, a principle which lies underneath every reality. The three-dimension reality that you experience, or most human experience in their daily lives, is the reality of the objects and the reality of the form. You see, what is an object or what is a form? Anything which has a boundary, it's called an object. It has a shape. The very truth of its shape defines that it is subject to demise, because it has boundary. And it can be this big, or it can be this big, or it can be humongous. But as long as it has boundaries, it is subject to demise, or it has to come to an end. The one which has no boundary, the one which has no limits or boundary, means it has no objectivity attached to it. It is omnipotent. The reason it is omnipotent, because there is no shape here, there is no form here, there is no boundary here. Anything which the very boundary defines a shape or a form. I hope you understand, and I hope it's clear to you. The very shape, the very boundary defines the very boundary of something defines the shape and the form. But the one which has no shape or no form is boundless. Meanings, it has no limits, and meaning it has no objectivity attached to it. Meaning it is not subject to birth, and it is not subject to demise. Meaning it was never born, and it would never come to an end. The one which has no boundaries was never born and would never come to an end. The very boundary defines shape and form. As soon as the shape and form defined, it is of course subject to birth, and it would come to an end. So what we understand as Brahman has no beginning and no end, because the word Brahman, as I mentioned not long ago, indicates or point out to that which is boundless or limitless or has no boundaries. And also that is the fundamental form of the being. When I am saying it's the fundamental form of the being, it means the being as you and the being as me. And it has to be that way, because when Brahman gives birth to shape and forms, then shape and form runs its course to shed the karma. So it has to be that way. When as I said, the fundamental state of the being is Brahman. The you and I are the shape and forms. When we look through the perspective of a separate self or a separate individual, we understand and we say you and I. But from the perspective of Brahman, there is just Brahman. There is no you and I. I hope you understand what I'm saying. From the perspective of Brahman, there is just Brahman. There is no you and I. Brahman does not understand you and I. You and I through the perspective of a separate individual and from a separate self understand you and I. So when Brahman manifests itself in a shape, or when Brahman manifests itself in a form, that shape or form itself has all the essence of it. But it is subject to birth and demise, because the very shape and form defines its objectivity. If you understand the profoundness and depth of my meanings, the very nature, the very nature of the boundary, the very nature of the boundary defines the very nature of the boundary defines you and I, and the very nature of the boundary is subject to birth and death. But through the perspective, I hope you see the difference, but through the perspective of Brahman, there is no an I. Brahman is taking a form and a shape to know itself. To know itself. That's why it is giving birth all the time. That is why it is giving birth all the time without having the awareness of it. in spiritual terms and in Sanskrit and in Hindi, there is a term that we understand or know as Atman. So Brahman, when it takes the shape or a form of the body to know itself in numerous different ways, that a small part of the Brahman which carries all the essence of the Brahman can be understood as Atman. And what happens when the body dissolves, then the shape and form dissolves. It dissolves in Brahman. It's just like if it's a metaphor that we can understand Brahman easily, that if we take a drop out of the ocean, if we take a drop out of the ocean, the very drop that we took out of the ocean has all the essence of the ocean itself. So the drop would be understood as shape and form, and the ocean is Brahman, because the drop carries all the essence of the ocean. The ocean is trying to understand by separating itself from the drop. Million, trillions, or countless drops that there is no count are making, of course, the ocean. So the drop is the ocean and ocean is the drop. So that's the relation between Atman and the Brahman. There is a story in ancient India that a little fish, there is a story in ancient India that a little fish, who of course was in the ocean, asked the big fish, the mum fish, the mother fish, that mum or the mother, I want to see the ocean. You see, the little fish, are you following what I'm saying to you? The little fish, which is already in the ocean, is asking the mother or mum fish that, Mom, I want to see where the ocean is. And they both are, of course, in the ocean. So your inquiry actually reminded me of that story when you asked me, and I encourage you always to ask me questions. No question is a silly question. Every question is out there for a reason. So your question or your inquiry reminded me of that story when you ask what is Brahman. So me or you, when we look at ourselves through the perspective or through the point of view of a separate self, we say that what is Brahman or where is Brahman. But when through the dedication towards yoga and through the dedication towards our practice and through the dedication towards our meditation, and of course by sharing our karma on the regular basis, by practicing and dedicating ourselves to kriya and meditation, one can still remain in the shape of a body. One can still remain in the form of a body and yet experience Brahman. You see, when in the ancient India you spoke with the sages, in ancient India you spoke with the rishis, in ancient India you spoke with the ancient wise men, or even at the present age, when you speak with the rishis or sages in India about who am I, so one fundamental and primary thing, they would tell you that there is no separation in the being. There is only one being. This is the answer and this is the response of the wise man or the sage or the yogi, that there is no separation. There is just one being. That's they would answer, because through their dedication, through their practice, through their yoga and through their meditation, they have achieved that form. They have achieved that level of awareness, and they have achieved clarity. They have achieved the level of awareness and clarity that there is no other. There is just one being. And that being itself is trying to know itself by taking different form and shapes. Otherwise, it is limitless. It is boundless. That is what we understand as Brahman. That it takes the physicality. What is physicality? The very boundary. And of course, as soon as it takes the physicality or the boundary, or it defines the shape or a form, it is subject to the beginning and it is subject to the end. It is subject to the birth and it is subject to its bodily demise. You see. Otherwise, it cannot know. It's just one being which is boundless. It is just one being which is limitless. It is just one being that is always there and wrapped around the form and shapes. And it is always there. It is so generic that we have learned after the numerous years of conditioning, and then we have learned after the numerous years of domestication that it is overlooked, but it is always there. Now, one can say that what is the difference between Brahman and self-awareness or self-consciousness. Remember something. These are all the words, the markers which indicate to a very concrete truth that really exists out there. You see? So to answer is, there is no difference in the sense of self-awareness and in the sense and Brahman. In the sense of self-awareness and Brahman, there is no difference. The sense of self-awareness, a sense cannot have boundary. A sense cannot have a shape. A sense cannot have a form. A sense cannot be tasted. A sense cannot be touched. A sense cannot be smelled. A sense has no physical, emotional, or any of those parameters attached to it. A sense has no attributes to it. No attributes whatsoever. A sense cannot have all that. It's just a sense. The sense of self-awareness, which is not aware by something. This is the term we understand from ancient India and from the Vedas, non-duality. that there is no other. The sense is not aware by something. There is no other. There is just the sense. You understand? There is no other. There is just the sense. When this sense interacts with itself, it gives birth non-stop out of time. Every second it is giving birth. And then when it gives birth, it knows through all those births itself. The sense is trying to know itself. The most powerful and the most intelligent and the most genius entity there is that sense of self-awareness. And remember, that sense is trying to know itself by when it interacts itself, it gives birth to life. And the life and the manifestation of nature carries all the essence, of that sense. You see, carries all the essence. The sense is not aware by something. The sense is not aware with something, because there is no duality. Through the Vedas and through the ancient wisdom from India, we understand that it's not aware by something. The sense is self-aware. The sense is not aware by something, but the sense is self-aware. The sense itself is aware of itself. If you understand truly what I am saying, I'm trying to make it very, very simple so everybody can understand that. I'm trying to break it down. But even though if you have any questions regarding that, even though if you have any inquiries regarding what I am trying to explain, please write me, okay? And I would deliver another message, and I would deliver the words of truth and wisdom again to clarify your confusion. So the sense is not aware by something. The sense is aware of itself. When it gives birth to life, the very life itself carries all the essence of that sense in it, and the nature manifests. You see, what in the ancient sages and ages, they said that there is no compassion, or there is no right or wrong in nature. You see, there is just nature. So it carries all its essence. The very fundamental, primary state of the being is the sense of self-awareness, the omnipotent. The sense has no attributes. Anything which has no attributes has no beginning to it and has no end to it. Anything which has no attributes is not subject to birth and is not subject to demise. Anything which has no attributes, it cannot be destroyed. That's why in the spiritual circles, that's why in the religious circles, you hear that God is omnipotent. The reason God is omnipotent, because it has no objectivity. The sense of self-awareness has no objectivity attached to it, no attributes whatsoever. Time is a marker, and of course this is out of time, giving birth. If you want to comprehend what I am saying to you through the perspective of the mind, you can say it is giving birth every second. You see, but the truth of the matter is just giving birth. So I have detailed that what is Brahman. I have detailed what is self-awareness. It's important for you to know. However, I would go further, and I would stress for you to experience it, as I said, through our dedication, through our practice, and through Kriya, we can experience that sense. I experience it all the time. See, I experience that sense all the time. The very life which is running through this body is given birth by the sense of self-awareness. Somebody asked Krishnamurti about God, that what is God? And Krishnamurti answered to this person that this is a jungle and that you have to find your own way. This is a jungle and that you have to find your own way. There is nothing, but there is just eternity. Eternity means now it has no boundaries. Eternity means now it has no limits. It's boundless. It has no end because and it has no beginning. Hence it has no end. Anything which has a beginning would come to an end, you see, by its very definition. But Krishnamurti said there is just eternity without end, without beginning or end. If you want to call it God, go right ahead. You see, that's what he answered. So Brahman is eternity. Brahman is boundless. Brahman can be experienced while remaining in the physical form, no matter what the physical form or shape that can be. You see, Brahman can be experienced while still remaining in the physical form, no matter what the physical form or that shape can be. Remember, not long ago I mentioned the story of the fish, that the baby fish which was in the ocean asked the mother fish that, "Mother, where is the ocean? I want to experience the ocean." And the mother replied, "You are in the ocean." You see, so because of the conditioning, because of the beliefs, because of extremely less receptivity towards the truth, it seems like the Brahman is something out there. But Brahman is always, always here. As a matter of fact, there is no distance in it. Because again, remember something. Please remember that distance indicates time, but remember that there is no time. Time is just a marker, very useful marker, again, as I said, so we can function in the society. Otherwise, time itself has no meanings in reality. So it's always there without time. You see, it's always there, and it always would be. It's not going anywhere, it is not coming from anywhere. You see, it is not coming from anywhere, I repeat myself, and it is not going anywhere. It is just always is there, and it would always remain. It does not matter that what shape or form one can take. You see, it does not matter. The Brahman, actually, it does not matter what manifestation Brahman gives birth to. You understand? It does not matter what manifestation Brahman gives birth to. No matter whatever the manifestation is, it's not about the manifestation itself, it's about the Brahman. So what I am saying, through the perspective of Brahman, there is just Brahman, there is no other. There is just Brahman. Brahman does not understand duality. You understand what I'm saying? Brahman itself does not understand duality. Brahman has no concept or no awareness or no mind frame of duality. Brahman only knows that there is Brahman, and you can experience that powerful form that there is by making some time always for yourself and for yourself solely. You can experience the very Brahman. You can experience the very Brahman by making some time for yourself. And when it becomes a part of your routine, when it becomes a part of your practice, when you carry this practice by the regular basis, by bringing little by little transformation every day in your life, then there comes a time in your life that you experience Brahman every single second of the day. But remember something. It's when I am saying you would experience Brahman every single second of the day, I am telling you in this period in time through the point of view of the separate self. I hope you understand everything what I'm saying to you. I am telling you in this moment in time that you can experience Brahman every second through the perspective of separate self, through the perspective of an individual, but through the perspective of Brahman, the Brahman is just experiencing itself. And that separate self or the separate individual basically is also in Brahman, through which Brahman is experiencing itself. If you understand what I'm saying, the separate self and all the thought process, all the memory, all the imagination, and everything which a separate self carries, through the perspective of Brahman, Brahman is just experiencing itself while going through with that. You see what I'm saying? But through the perspective of separate self or an individual, you can experience Brahman. So in the end, what's happening, if you understand, if you comprehend fully what I'm saying to you, in the end, what's happening is it's Brahman only experiencing itself. You see? That's why Krishnamurti said that you are a choiceless consciousness, sir. Choiceless consciousness. It's a beautiful way, the word he used. He said, you are a choiceless consciousness, sir. You see, it's a beautiful way to express that. Meaning you have no say in the matter of whether be or not to be. You are is simple, without any reason. You are without any justification. You are. You don't have a you don't need a reason. You don't need a justification, or you don't even need a purpose. You see. That's why, in order to be, you don't need a justification or a purpose in order to be. You just are. That's why Krishnamurti said that you are a choiceless consciousness, sir, and you have no choice but to evolve. You see, this is pure wisdom. The magnitude, the profoundness of his statement that you are a choiceless consciousness and you have no choice but to evolve. So he's telling through the perspective of a separate self to another individual. Remember, you and I are only, when we look at ourselves through the perspective of a separate self. So he is telling another person, another being, that you are a choiceless consciousness. But through the perspective of Brahman, there is no other. There is nothing that it can know it with, or it can be identified by. There is just Brahman without any beginning or an end. So do you think that I have answered your inquiry, and I'm sure I have, because I looked at, as I always do, through different perspective. I tried to look at even through the perspective of Brahman, and then I tried to look at through the perspective of an individual, you see. But in the end, remember something, then there is no you and I, there is just I. There is no you and I, there is just I. And that I is not a personal property of one individual or one separate self. The I is the common denominator which runs through every experience. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever noticed that in agony, in misery, in happiness, in tornadoes, in chaos, in abundance, in grief, in depression, in anxiety, in fear, in everything that what you have ever experienced in your entire life and through your entire life, the bliss, the happiness, the joy, the high, the fear, the paranoia, the depression, the grief, the happiness, the sadness, the breakups, the abundance, everything, you see, what you have experienced in your entire life, there is one thing which has never left you. You see what I'm saying? There is one thing that has never left you, and it's that I. That I is not a personal property of a separate self or a separate individual. The I is a common denominator. You see what I'm saying? The I is a common denominator which ran through in all this what you experience. By the way, you had the bell. So I would just give you the blessing in a couple of minutes. But the I is the God's I. The I is itself what you can title or label, or in the religious circles we say I is the God's I. That I does not belong to an individual. It's a common denominator which literally runs through every experience. It has never left you. Even the blood relations sadly abandon each other. Even the blood relations, even the friendship which were built over the course of years and numerous years, even I have seen all that. I am very old. I have seen all that what happens. Even in the most beautiful situations and the most chaotic and the most grieved situations, the common denominator is always there. You see? And what is that common denominator? What is that common denominator? Denominator is I. The sense of being aware. You see, the sense of being aware is there, so all this happens. Don't you see this, people? Don't you see that how generic it is, and it is always overlooked? Don't you see that how clear this is? Don't you see this, people? The sense of being aware, or the sense of being, is there, so all this. In other words, or easy words, the sense, had you not existed, nothing would exist. You see, in other words, or easy words, I'm telling you, had you not existed to begin with, nothing would exist. So understand and bring your awareness to the limitless and the powerful state of that being, that which is you. You are, so is everything. I am, so is the universe. You see, I am. Had I not existed, nothing would exist. I am, so is the universe. Know that. I am. Aham Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. I am the universe. I am, so is the universe. And the second stage in the teaching is I am the universe. Aham Brahmasmi. So understand the magnitude of your liberty. Understand the magnitude of your freedom, that you are limitless. But then we go through with the three-dimensional reality because of the foolish conditioning and everything that's been handed over to us, and we grieve. And God forbid me, we scheme to get even. Somebody said something nasty to you. Then we gossip. Then we backbite. We do all these small petty things in the three-dimensional reality. And what is slipping by underneath our hands is the immensity of being. The immensity of I am. You see, the immensity. The liberty, the limitless of I am, that's slipping away. And my job is to get you in touch with what is limitless. That's my job here, to bring clarity. So you can be that small fish in the ocean, and then you wouldn't have to ask that mother, I want to experience the ocean. Then you can be that small fish and still experiencing the entire ocean. 2,000 years back, a sage and a very wise man, Lord Christ, said, "Be still and know that I am is God." Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.